Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions live on Sunday. Oh, I see people pouring in. This is great. Welcome, everyone. I am so thrilled today to be joined by a kindred soul. There's his wife even popping on there.
Oh.
Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions live. We're thrilled to have you here and that you're spending some time around the soulful fire with us today. We've had a theme going on for the last month, and it's been about kindness and the soulful way. We actually every month pick a theme, and it's about aligning our values with how we live every single day. And we've been talking kindness this whole month. We came at it from the global and systemic perspective, the interpersonal and the personal, and today we're talking about community with Dave Chesney. And so I'm going to give a little bit of background on Dave Chesney and then tell a little personal story, and then we'll get into it. So Dave he's a media mogul. He started the very first online Canadian newspaper called the White Rock Sun, and he every week keeps us in the loop of what's going on in our community. And also he's had a background in media. He's a council member first in 2014, since 2014, was reelected in 2022. So he is a real pillar of community in our world. He is the pillar in our community. And the most important element of what Dave Chesney is to me personally is that those of you that know me and follow me, you know that I've lived in 4 different countries. I've lived in over a dozen cities. And usually when you move into a city, the people that are locals have a harder time connecting than the expats, because people that move in from another place want to know you and they want to build community and family. And Dave Chesney, although he is a longtime White Rocker here in BC, Canada, he brought me right into the fold. So we kind of met online, and Dave and I were just chatting about this a little bit, trying to figure out how we met one another. But we met kind of online, and then I think we saw each other at a couple of events. And then he just brought me into the fold in our community, and he has connected me with business opportunities. We become really good friends. And then also his wife, Gail, is just a supporter from the very beginning of all this soulful way. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Dave Chesney, talking about kindness. And maybe you want to tell us a little bit about you and your background here, Dave. And just, I'd love to hear from you. I'm thrilled you're here this morning, sweetheart.
How long do we have? Just an hour and a half?
Yeah, that's just the one question.
You, you heap too much praise on me by saying that I brought you in, Jennifer. It was hard to keep a person like you out with your passion. Yes, we were talking before we started, and I do sort of remember how we kind of came together, but it always seems like you've always been in my life. There was that kind of connection.
Yeah.
So my connection with the community as a kid growing up, I grew up, 10 miles north of here at where the Guildford Shopping Center is now,
Yeah.
back in the 50s and the 60s. And when I was, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, probably 4, 5, 6, for years, we used to come down behind the semi-ammo band shell. There used to be a campground. So, we weren't rich, we weren't poor, but it was a way to have an extra week of holidays. Dad would come down and set up the old canvas tent and dig out the Coleman stove and set everything up. And he would go to work every day. But my mother and I and sister had an extra week of holidays at the beach. Now, it was so close to where I lived, but as a young kid that was like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you may as well transported me to another planet. It was, oh my God, the beach. We're going to be at the beach for a week. I tell people, and it's the honest to God truth, I didn't know there was another side of White Rock where the pier is until I had my own car.
Totally. I hear you. That was my favorite story. The very first lunch you and I went to him for coffee the very first time, and you told me that story, and I got a whole inner feel for what White Rock was like. I didn't know there was a downtown until, for about 6 months after I knew what White Rock was. This is the
Well,
place.
even when
Yeah.
we would drive in, we would come down Johnson Road, and in Johnson those days you had to make a jog 32nd Avenue. You couldn't come straight down 152nd. So we would come along King George Highway and then come down State Road 160th over to Semiahmo Park. So again, I didn't know there was a town called White Rock. Had no idea. No
Yeah.
idea.
And for those of you that are just joining us, welcome. And we're talking about White Rock, BC, Canada. So Dave is a pillar of this community. He's been here for how many years, Dave? Or
40
not
years.
even 40 years. 40 years in White Rock. And if you've not been here, no matter where you live in this world and where you're coming from, you need to come visit. It's this beautiful little beachside town. You meander along the waterfront. There's a beautiful ocean view. There's the Canada's longest pier, which Dave Chesney put that big sign up there, which is a beautiful tribute to us having the longest pier in Canada. It's a really phenomenal little place. So yeah, so Dave, it was such a different world. That was it different then? 40 years ago, I know you were camping along the beach, which is not possible anymore because of the development along the waterfront. But was it a really connected community? How big was the community? What did it feel like back then?
So it's sort of two stages. As I say, as a child coming here,
Yeah,
that was, I still, on rare mornings when somebody's had an illegal beach fire, I'll catch a whiff of that smell of a campfire on the beach, and it sets off the synapses. Just takes me right back to the 50s, because everybody had a fire on the beach at night. You had
yeah,
a you Dad would come home from work, we'd get in our swim trunks and we'd go down to the beach and we'd have a swim and we'd come out and build a little fire and roast hot dogs and marshmallows. And so there was that era of White Rock. And then when I actually moved here, probably, yeah, maybe when I was into my early 20s, I first
yeah,
moved here. And White Rock it always has been very isolated and continues to be. You
yeah,
have to be coming here to get here.
yeah,
So White Rock was, yeah, it was a very bohemian community. A lot of artists, a lot of characters, people
yeah,
that normally wouldn't fit in
yeah.
elsewhere. They
Oh,
were
that's how you and I ended up here.
could, could very well be just the very fabric
Yeah,
of the community, and sort of a sidebar to that. Later on in the late 70s, early 80s, when I went to work for Fox Radio in Vancouver, Sterling Fox, who lives here in White Rock, stopped me in the hallway one day. He was on AM and he said, "Hey, how do you do? I'm Sterling Fox. I hear you're the new promotion music director at FM." I said, "Yeah, that's right." He says, "Oh, you live in White Rock?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you?" He says, "Yeah, I live down on Columbia Avenue." He says, "We should go." Oh, hang on a minute. This sales guy was walking by, dressed just like Herb Tarlick from WKRP. Loud,
white belt, white shoes.
yeah, absolutely. And Sterling goes, "Hey, Bill, hang on a minute here. I meet the new FM director of music, as Dave Chesney. He lives in White Rock just like us, Bill." And Bill sort of stepped back and looked me up and down. He goes, "How long have you lived in White Rock?" I said, "Well, I don't know, a number of years." And he goes, "Weird, it's a small town. Funny, I've never seen you. Where do you live?" I said, "Well, I live down on Marine Drive above the Pier View Inn." He goes, "Oh, well, no wonder I've never seen you." He says, "I never go down there. It's nothing but bikers, drug dealers, and strippers." And I'm like, so,
Okay, so it was a little bit different from a kindness perspective back then. It was a
well,
different kind of kindness going
that,
on down by here.
that that didn't totally define White
No.
Rock. It
Yeah,
it, it had had elements to it that
yeah,
probably made it very unique, and one being that we had a motorcycle club here in White Rock, the
man.
Gypsy Wheelers. So it was a very small town, and kind of everybody that grew up and went to school here knew all the members of the club. They'd roar up and down the hill, and I mean, it was part of the fabric. I mean, there was always great parties, and people would always be in fear that the Gypsy Wheelers might turn up tonight. Um, there was a nightclub up on the King George Highway called the Birdcage, and the
Wow.
Purple Monkey, and Heart, and Trooper, and all
Wow.
of the day. They were just the bands that played like 5 nights a week. Uh,
Yeah,
so it was, yeah, it was, as I say, you had to be coming here to get here. It wasn't really, it wasn't on the way to anywhere. You had to pull off, you still have to pull off a Highway 99 or come
yeah,
down George Highway. You don't really drive through White Rock. So,
no,
that's kind of, the good thing and the bad thing about
yeah.
White Rock are exactly the same. Sometimes, I have friends that come here, that they live in Vancouver, and they say, "I haven't been to White Rock in years," and I'm
Yeah.
really, I don't understand that, but
No, but it is like a little haven. It does feel separate from everywhere else. And as I say, I lived in quite a few countries and a lot of really fun, cool cities. But the moment we landed in White Rock, and we're just outside the border, so it's kind of that South Surrey, White Rock, that feeling, White Rock is our community. And I felt instantly at home. And I often say that if I had come here first, I don't know that I would have lived in Austria and Grand Cayman and, San Diego and all those other places, because there's such a special vibe here. And as I say, it's really unique, Dave. Like all the places that I have lived, it's the expats that take me into the fold because we want to build family really quickly because you don't know how long you're going to be in this town, and you're a local. And honest to goodness, I've never had that experience where a local reached out, said, "Hey, let's go for coffee. I've noticed you. I want to see what you're about. I feel like there's a kinship there." And then to build that local friendship, like you really are out there connecting with people. So what made you, I mean, there's so many questions, so many places we're going to go. But so the growth, when did you start to see the spike in the growth? And maybe, when did that lead into running for council, getting involved in that way? And then, how did that kind of flow into, or what was the chronological order of starting the White Rock Sun, which is such a staple for all of us here to know what's going on in the community and to understand what's going on at council, et cetera. So with the growth and then your involvement, how did that kind of flow?
It all kind of ties together. No matter where I lived, I always read the community newspapers. My father was
Yeah.
very involved with community. He joined every possible service group known to mankind, the Kinsmen, the Rotary. I think he had an off night and joined the Masons just because he had an open night. But so
Oh, I wish I could have met your dad. What a
he was
character.
he was always very involved in the
Yeah.
community. And the apple didn't fall very far from the tree in that sense. So I'm living in White Rock in the 90s. I've lived here for 40 years, not consecutively, because sometimes through work or through other extenuating circumstances, I moved away for periods of time.
Yeah.
But I would always come back. Even I lived in Kitsilano and lived out at UBC,
Okay.
and nobody was from there. I never, I would get I had that craving for community, so
Yeah.
much so that I used to go over to Commercial Drive. It was the only area that I could find in Vancouver that had
Yeah.
that real. I'd buy a coffee and sit out front of Cafe Calabria and just listen
Yeah.
to the chatter. And I knew that these people were born, raised here, knew their neighbor's name. But I would come back to White Rock and get a coffee and just sit down on the beach. It has always felt like home to me. So
Yeah.
back in the late '90s, early 2000s, I can't remember the exact date, but I was reading the Peace Arch News, the newspaper of record here in
Yeah.
White, and I'm just sort of scanning through it, and the headline caught me. It said, "Councillor to say whale wall to come down." Now, for those that don't know White Rock and haven't been here, we were fortunate enough that Wyland, a famous marine whale painter artist, did the first painting that he did outside of the U.S. here in Canada, thanks to our might have been the mayor at that time, certainly MLA Gordy Hogue
Okay.
enticed him to paint it. So reading this article and I'm thinking, well, why the hell would you take the whale wall down? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm reading through, and only then do I find out it says the whale wall is probably going to come down because of the two proposed high-rise towers that are going to be built. And I'm like, oh, hang on a minute here. What do you mean? I mean, I'm pretty connected. I always sort of knew what was going on in my community. What do you mean high-rise towers? Why don't I know anything about this? And so I started to ask people.
Yeah.
They were like, what do you mean high rises? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. What do I mean high rises?
Wow.
So I saw that there was going to be an open house at the United Church, a community conversation or whatever it was called in those days. So over the course of 2 nights, 750 of us residents stood in line patiently and stepped up to the microphone and said, don't do it. We
Yeah.
don't want high rises in our community. At that time, Metro Vancouver, the governing body of the Lower Mainland, had a projected build out of the Lower Mainland, and they identified Tawasin and White Rock were the two places that should never ever consider high rises. High rises should be built along the rapid transit lines like the Canada Line, which
Yeah.
hadn't even been built at that time, but the SkyTrain line. And if you look towards Lougheed Mall and that as you're driving into
Mhm.
Vancouver, you can see that's exactly what has happened. Perfect. So
Yeah.
750 of us stand there, get up to the council, or talk to the council, all amassed at the front of the church.
Yeah.
And at the end of the second night, the mayor of the day said, all right, so everybody's had your say. Okay, we're going to vote. All in favor? Against? Good night. And I'm like, what just happened here? Did you not hear what we just said? You've
Wow.
you've completely ignored the community's wishes. And if you're going to ask me my opinion,
It
at
should count for
least,
something.
exactly. So, I walked out of there absolutely dumbfounded, and I thought, well, so what do I do? And I remember my dad's words that at a young age he pounded into my head, Dave, if you're just going to bitch, we don't want to hear about it.
No,
Either put up or shut up. And I,
exactly.
well, I can't, I just can't not say nothing.
Yeah.
So off I went with a little pamphlet in my hand, knocking on doors,
Yeah.
trying to become a council member. Now, I never had any aspirations to be political, and I
Yeah.
still don't consider myself a politician.
No.
People,
I don't see you that way. You're just a person who listens to the community and tries to bring that across. You
I'm
really are a voice for a lot of people and who have a heart for the city. It's really
I'm
beautiful.
a public servant, a civil servant. I'm just a conduit.
Yeah.
Yeah, next thing I knew, I was knocking on doors, and through three elections, I would have been the next one, an election or two, and a by-election or two. I can't remember. I've lost track.
Yeah.
I was always the next one that would have been elected, and I'm like, if I'd have got my ass kicked the first time, I'd have just go, well, yeah, well, I guess this, I guess what I'm
This is not my way. Yeah. This isn't the
selling
plan.
ain't buying. But finally, yeah, I was successful enough back in. Well, this is my elect.
2014 was the first time you ran, right?
Right,
The first time you were elected.
right. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
woke up one day, and lo and behold, I had been elected to council.
Yeah.
And I had used to be Shaw Cable here in White Rock, and they used to televise the council meetings.
Oh, okay.
And I used to watch them, not religiously, but I used to watch them, and I used to watch Surrey Council just because I had an interest. This was before I ever decided I was going to take a run at council,
Yeah.
but I kind of wanted to know what was going on, and to be very honest, it kind of made for interesting viewing. I mean,
Yeah.
it was working in the media realm at that time. It
Yeah.
was kind of low budget. It was almost yeah, it was kind of like the Trailer Park
Yeah.
Boy. Uh,
And this is not like in the broader scheme of things, because some people watching here are not from White Rock or they're not involved in our community, but this is not a new story for small towns, right? Like I grew up in Orillia, Ontario, Canada, and it was 24,000 people for forever. My dad was president of the real estate board. He was chairman of the opera house. He was always involved in the community efforts, very much grew up very much like you did, being involved if you're going to, put up and shut up or, do something about it. And he was very much that way. And we watched, particularly Aurelia and Barrie next door, just outside of Toronto, it was a huge plight, like finding that balance between keeping the nostalgia and the connection and that kindness, that interconnected and that high social capital, while still advancing, like it's still developing the community to bring people in, to increase tourism, to help the small businesses. So what's that been like from you? I mean, you're watching council and now you're running for it. So, kind of in that broader scheme, how has it been kind of balancing the different personalities and trying to keep that kindness alive, that connectedness alive, while still growing and really listening to the people, but also growing a community?
well, I guess I could break it into the three different terms of council. So the first term, Councillor Helen Fathers, the late Helen Fathers, who became uh, uh,
Yeah. She was a doll. I've heard such beautiful things about her.
and she became like a mentor. So there's Helen and I on council, and there's 7 members on council. So
Yeah.
the other 5 were all fully backed by developers
Okay.
who, nothing new in White Rock. Developers figured out in the Lower Mainland they could very easily, at a low cost, take control of councils and direct the development in that community. So the first term of council was horrifying. To be very honest, it was not an enjoyable experience at
Wow.
all.
It's
Virtually
amazing you stuck with it. We're grateful you did.
four years of voting was 5-2, 5-2, 5-2. I'd
Yeah.
be driving to council and I'd go like, I really wonder why I'm wasting my time because, I could have just phoned it in. Uh, but I persevered, and thankfully, due to the strength of Helen, I made it through. So because in that one 4-year period, 10 high rises were approved. 8 of them needed OCP amendments, which means the official community plan was
Right.
thrown out the window and high rises started popping up here, there, and everywhere. It's a game of giant whack a mole. And
Yeah.
I knew the community was up in arms. And sure enough, the next election, Helen Fathers and I were the only two to be returned. The other 5 all shown the door that were backed by developers, and a group called uh, Democracy Direct. They were all elected. So now we're in another 5-2 makeup. And I'm thinking, and Helen and I were like, well, boy, the pendulum really never stops in the middle, does it? Because they basically ran on, if you elect us, we won't build any high rises.
Wow. Such an extreme. Yeah.
Absolute, complete swing.
Pivot. 360.
So now we've realized perhaps we're in another 5-2 council. To the credit, in the early stages of that council, they didn't block vote. We all came in. It was a beautiful thing. We came in and we put our jackets on the back of the chairs. We debated. They had their masters, people that were against any high rises. I was never against development of White Rock, but I always stated that the development should have been along North Bluff. We had 4 lanes to move the traffic back and forth. Nobody in White Rock would be in shadows. And we knew what Surrey would do across the road eventually.
Yeah.
So now we're into the second term and everything's going along pretty good. And, we'd get up at the end of the night and we may have disagreed, but I could respectfully say, thank you very much. It was
Yeah.
nice spending my time with you.
Felt
Then,
fair.
then their 5 kind of broke apart and a lot of infighting happened. So now it was like, okay, here we go again. But during that period of time, we basically didn't build a chicken coop in White Rock. So we went from high rise mania to nothing. But nobody in the community would stop me on the street and go, "What are you idiots doing? You're not. You're doing nothing down there." I think people were completely happy to have the breather after
Yeah.
the massive build out of
Yeah.
White. So the second term, people were just like, the community was like, yeah, great, just don't do anything down there, just
Yeah.
leave it alone, all right. And so we made it through, and I questioned, okay, well, am I going to go another term? I decide, yeah, I'm going to give it another shot, and so now that brings us to the current term. And though there wasn't really a slate as such,
Yeah.
myself in a council once again that was being ruled 4-3 by
Yeah.
just my opinion, were backed by developers.
Okay.
They had a completely different vision of White
Yeah.
Rock, of mine, as well as I think the majority of the community. And we'll see when the next election comes around who's standing after we go to the polls.
It's
I
a tough deal to figure out how that we were just at the council meeting just a couple of weeks ago and just listening to people get up because we're just outside that White Rock. But listening to community members get up and really passionately talk about how they feel about why those developments are not, and it's not about no growth. I remember when the very first coffee you and I went to, I remember you saying it's not about no growth. It's about how we do it so we don't lose the heart of community. And people really want to stay here because they feel honored, they feel like they have a voice, and we don't want to lose the heart of what makes White Rock so special, right? In just the idea of development.
Well, a lot of the old timers moved away too with the huge property
Yeah.
value during
Yeah.
that first term, and it wasn't just in White Rock. The property
Oh,
values in the Lower Mainland went through the roof.
yeah.
I mean, I look at pieces of property that I looked at, considered
Yeah.
buying in the late '70s. And it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
would have, could have, should have.
Yeah.
But when that boom happened, most of the old timers moved away.
Yeah.
They got out.
Yeah.
I just during that period, not that long ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, this guy that I didn't know his name, but I saw him around town a lot. And he stopped me in the grocery store. He said, "Hey, Chesney, you're a councillor, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I live down on Anderson Street. I want to talk to you. Here's my address. Come on down. I got a problem." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I drive down. As soon as I drive up Little Anderson Street, which is 1 block off of Marine Drive, no
Yeah.
ocean.
Right by the water. Yeah.
Yeah, down there where the boat launch is. As I'm driving down Anderson Street, I don't need to check the address because I know which house I'm going to. His front yard looked like Sanford and Sons. I, yeah, there was a Volkswagen minibus upside down in his front yard. That was just the beginning of the crap and the junk and the collectibles.
He's been there forever, longer than you.
Yeah, exactly. So I go in and we sit down at the coffee table, and I'm like, so, need I ask what your problem is? He said, the bylaw officers keep coming by, tell me I got to clean that yard up. He says, look at all these new houses they build here. I said, well, I mean, I get it, but you know what? You're gonna get nailed with an unsightly property thing. But
Yeah.
maybe next time one of those realtors come by, say, how about if you hire somebody and clean it up and cut my grass? And he goes, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I said, well, the other option is, now this is a 30 by 90-foot building lot. It's got a little old Jimmy shack, and he pulls a pile of paper from across the table and gives it to me. He's got like 8 or 10 uh, offers from realtors ranging from 1.2 to $1.6 million for a 30 by 90-foot building lot with no ocean view, and you can eat coal dust day and night. And I look at this and I go, I can guess what you paid for this piece of property.
Yeah.
40,000. I said, exactly. I'd have guessed in that neighborhood. So why don't you sell it and move? You can live anywhere you want. Go buy a boat and sail around the Bahamas. And he goes, I don't want to move. This is,
No,
and I'm like, yeah, ding, ding. That's right. It's your home. He doesn't want to move anymore.
no. It's not about the money. It's about the community. It's about, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And so, did I answer your question?
You did. Okay, but I gotta switch gears because people
Yeah.
don't know. So welcome. I think there's a number of new people that joined us. Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live. We're thrilled to have you here. This is Dave Chesney. He's a council member, editor of the White Rock Sun. He's also a media guy. He's always been connected to music. So I want to switch gears a little bit, Dave. Let's talk about what makes community, small community, and particularly this community, because we've talked a lot about Charles Montgomery wrote that book called Happy City. And so, what makes a city spectacular? How do we stay connected? And maybe talk about that in relation to White Rock. So, what do you think makes White Rock special? What
The
are the
people,
things that the
the people,
people? Yeah.
simply the people.
And
And
how do we stay connected with those people? Right?
well, we have to make the effort, eh? But you you
Yeah.
you can't teach people how to live. I'll tell you two quick little stories. We have a grocery store in White Rock here on the main strip called House Market.
Yeah.
Now, South Asian gentleman Jaspar has owned it for years. He never bothered to change the name when he bought it. It was just House Market. I don't even know whether the guy that owned it before was named Howe. But so Jaspar bought it,
Yeah.
and back in the days, a number of years ago when I used to smoke, I would stopping to see Jaspar and get smokes just because I really liked talking to him. He was connected in the community and he talked to a lot of people. So, what a great way to find out what's going on in the community as far as I was concerned. As good as reading the local newspaper. So, I'm
Yeah.
talking to Jaspar one day, and this guy walks up behind me, and I leave and I go outside, probably looking at my lottery ticket or something. And the guy walks out behind me and he comes up beside me. He says, hey, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, sure. He goes, how do you know that guy's name? He says, I've been coming here for years. I never knew his name. I said, well, I, I asked him. He goes, a big smile on his face, and he goes, I can't wait to come here next time. I'm going to say hello, Jasper. And I'm like, well, good for you. So there's kind of like that pay it forward situation. And in real life, again, you can't teach people how to live. And it can't, connecting, when I say about the people that make up the community, it's one of the reasons, one of the byproducts that I really like about running for council is I get to go knock on strangers' doors.
Yeah.
And you never know. It's like the biggest game show you've ever been part of. Like door number two or door number three.
What's behind
You
door number 3?
have
Yeah.
no idea what's going to open that door.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating because there's so
Yes.
many people that live here. Everybody's got a story, but there's a lot of incredibly interesting characters, from characters to CEO of Fortune 500 companies that live here and just below the radar. They're
Yeah.
here for the same reason that we are: the beautiful scenery,
Yeah.
the small town feel. It's still there, and you have to find it. You have to dig a little bit more.
Yeah.
But again, making that connection.
Yeah.
I think it's up to each individual, and I'll give you another perfect example. There's a barber shop that I don't get my hair cut at, but I like Sam. He's from Lebanon, and he's kind of all the barbers in White Rock
Yeah.
are
I
Lebanon.
wonder if that's Todd's barber, my husband's barber. You'll have to chime in there, Todd, because he goes to a local barber and that's where he gets his haircut. So
Well, it,
yeah,
it could be Hussein or it could be Sam,
yeah,
but Sam to me is the godfather of all the barber shops. Like I really do think that they have to come and pay homage to Sam to be here. So
it
I'm
is
going out.
Hussein. Todd just sent a little note, said it is Hussein that he goes and gets his haircut with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm walking down the street the other day, and what's been going on in the world has been on my mind only because um, Sam is from Lebanon, and at different times when there's been troubles in the Middle East, I always stop in to see how Sam's doing.
yeah,
So rather cosmically, the other day I walked into the office. It was about 5 to 5. I was going next door to the bread box to get some groceries. And I thought, oh, there's Sam. I could see him sitting in his barber shop. So I walked in and I was like, hey, Sam, how you doing? And he looked up and I could see the pain on his face. And I walked around the counter and he had his laptop open and he was watching Al Jazeera. And he pointed at 4:54 p.m. The street where his relatives live in Lebanon was bombed.
oh
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh my
my
God,
God.
you know, it just,
It's so real it's so, we're untouched here, but it's so real for people that,
well, we
yeah,
are untouched. That's the illustration of that.
yeah,
Yes, personally, did it happen to me? No, but it
but it
happened
feels it.
in
Yeah,
it. And so as a result of that, um, yeah, long roundabout way of answering your question. We have to make the effort
absolutely.
connected. We can. I urge people all the time: join a volunteer group,
Yeah.
get out, mix, mingle. We're the eighth densest city in Canada,
Yeah.
and for me, that alone is reason enough to push back on more massive development. But we're 5 square kilometers, 2 square miles. We're on top of each other.
Yeah.
It should be really easy to connect. Uh, I think
And I
there's
think people are craving that. Like, I know that's one of the things. I mean, even when I lived in other places, like I picked Grand Cayman because it was 30 miles long, 10 miles wide. I picked a village in Austria because I've always craved that small community feel. And I know our friend Alex, I don't know if he's on here today, but we met Alex buying an electric guitar for our son on, Facebook Marketplace. And he lives in Vancouver, but he has created that little pocket of community. And he was talking about the fact that it really matters to them. They're wandering around their neighborhood, seeing the little local shops. Where do you connect? So it doesn't matter where you live. It's seeking out those individuals and connecting as people to be able to create that sense of community. And I think we found with White Rock, it's very unique because there's lots of opportunity to connect, which is something that Charles Montgomery talks about in his Happy City. There's lots of opportunity, not just, I mean, Todd and I walked the pier. We were down there this morning. We were telling you, we were down there this morning. We're down most mornings. That's how we get to know the locals because we find that sometimes, because we're a tourist town. So in the evening, sometimes it can be very busy, but in the mornings at 6:30 or 7, that's where you're meeting your locals. And sometimes, it took us with a few of the locals, it took us about a year to get a hello. Like, it's not that they don't say hi, but like the stop and the conversation. Some people like their quiet, but there's this heart of community here in White Rock that I think we want to do everything we can to preserve those places. And then we want to create them where no matter where we live in the world to create those pockets of connection. Hey?
we're leery of strangers.
You know what? When I lived in Grand Cayman, it's funny you say that because I think in those small communities, a lot with transient people come in and out, expats. I ran a restaurant and a nightclub there for 3.5 years, and I was a GM, a general manager. And so the little breakfast restaurant I ran was a lot of Canadian women, and there was this woman, Margaret, who, because I didn't sign her paycheck and I wasn't a man, she was like, I don't really have to deal with you because I have status, you know. Like she has status and she doesn't really have to pay attention to me. For an entire year, she barely spoke to me. She always did her job and everybody loved her, but she barely spoke to me, even though I was her manager. Anyway, at the end of it, about a year and a half in, she started to kind of warm up. And by the third year in, and I said I was leaving, she came to me crying, invited me to her home to have dinner with her family. And she was crying and said, "This is why I don't love you expat people. You always end up leaving." And so I think it takes a while for people to trust that you're going to be there over time. So, I'm sure that's part of it. But
Could
yeah, yeah,
You're right. It could be. I never really thought
yeah.
about
But you know what? Maybe talk a little bit because there's so much. I mean, you're involved with Blue Frog, which is the incredible music studio that we have here, production studio, and they have events. All the events that are downtown along the waterfront in the summer. There's so much going on in that community building. Do you think that's, maybe talk a little bit about those events, why as a council, and as a community, that's been such of importance? And then do you think that's the reason why we feel so connected, or at least in part?
Well, I think there's some truth to that. Wrote a piece in the White Rock Sun a couple months back because I've sort of all of a sudden realized per capita we have more music, and I would even say not even just per capita in White Rock. We have more music going on. There's so many open mic jam sessions every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's somebody, today there's music at the White Rock Jazz Club is over at Crescent Beach every I think one Sunday a month. The Crescent Beach Legion's got Mark Branscombe, who many people know as a guitar player for the Mud Bay Blues Band, been around here for longer than I have. So there's always something going on musically. And I just sort of, when I started to tally it up, I was like, oh my God, like we could use the moniker, we're the live music capital of the Lower Mainland, because I think we
Yeah,
really are. Years ago, we had a group here, Jason Buey, the late Jason Buey, and Rod Dranfield, were the driving force behind the White Rock Blues Society. It was fabulous. I mean, they would organize blues concerts all the time. They were part of the International Blues Challenge that send a winner all the way down to Memphis, Tennessee, to compete every year. It was fabulous. And I remember being at a music conference in Toronto, and I mentioned to somebody that I was from White Rock, and they were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's the blues capital of Canada." And I'm like, "Yeah, I never really thought about it, but I guess we are."
it's very true. Yeah,
Maybe if I had another few hours in the day, maybe I could foster and build that. But so music is prevalent in our community. I was out last night as Waylon Walker, Al Walker played over at the Crescent Beach Legion, and just turned. I mean, he's been around. I remember seeing Al in the late '70s, early '80s. He was the house band at the Yale, the Blues
yeah,
Club in Vancouver. And he played, when Stevie Ray Vaughan was coming up and they needed an opener for some of his shows here. It was an
yeah,
Al Walker opened some of the shows. So good, so good. And his whole
yeah,
band was, 5 star to have that caliber of musicians playing
yeah,
in our backyard. And the place was jammed to the rafters. And it was an opportunity to run into old friends. Some you're happy to see, and some maybe not so happy to see. I'm just being facetious, but you know, musical events, anything like
yeah,
that does draw people together
yeah,
with one common denominator. And even if you don't know the person next to you, there's that connection.
yeah,
We're here because we love music and
yeah,
we love this kind of music.
absolutely.
So I think that draws the community together a lot.
Yeah,
We have a lot of there's an old adage that this community runs on volunteers. It
yeah,
absolutely does,
yeah,
whether it's the Hospice Society or the Peace Arch Hospital Foundation
yeah.
or any one of a number of
So many events, so many events.
all runs on all
Yeah,
people in this community. And again, I can't speak necessarily from other communities that I've seen. This community steps up
yeah.
when time is there, when the need is there, they step up.
Yeah.
So real
And I
proud.
think that's a big part of it when you're saying it's about, when I ask you what's the most special thing about White Rock, it's the people. We really do, if we want to maintain this, because this is not typical of all places. right? Even when I lived in Calgary, I work on social capital building campaigns. And when we moved to Calgary, it was starting to fragment because after the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, Calgary started to boom. And so that social fabric started to tear apart because there were so many people, and there's lots of studies done. Robert Putnam, an economist, has a great book called Bowling Alone in America. The fragmentation of society and the fact that we're losing that social capital, we're losing that social fabric, which makes us more tolerant, more accepting, more loving, more kind, more desirous of saying hello and being careful when you're driving down the street so you don't run grandma over who's trying to cross on the crosswalk, right? It's this idea that we stay connected because when we know each other, we treat each other better. And so it is up to each one of us, no matter where we live in the world, to try to create that pocket of kindness, that consideration, we don't want to lose that in our world. And it feels like we're so connected online, but in many ways, we've never been more disconnected because so many people are on their phones. And I find we have to work harder at that. We have to work harder at making sure we stay connected, that we reach out into our communities, that we are volunteering, that we are supporting. What are your thoughts on that and just the changes in our society and how we kind of keep that alive, Dave?
Well, I think you pretty much stated how I feel. I'll be very honest. I've never worked hard at anything in my life.
Because when you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly. To me, it
I
just
feel that way.
I see there's a group of gentlemen here in White Rock. They have a Facebook group where there is men over 55 or 65 or 60 or whatever get together and have dinners and that. And
Yeah.
actually, it's coming up on the 20th anniversary. We have a group here in White Rock that started out with just a couple of us going for lunch, and then it went to three, and then it went to four. We're anywhere between 12 to 14 members now, and we used to get together pretty well every week at different coffee shops. And then
Yeah.
I got, because I don't eat breakfast, I was like, well, this is ridiculous. I'm paying $7 for a coffee and a muffin. Why don't you guys come to my place, throw $10 on the table, I'll make breakfast, which we did for a number of years. So, coming up on our 20th anniversary, and in the past, somebody would say we would get together. We have a Christmas party. And somebody said, here's a toast to Dave. Thanks for putting this all together and keeping us all together. And I said, I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you love it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I did it because I wanted it.
Yeah.
I needed it. And I think that's, it's that, drink from the loving cup, taste it, and you'll never, ever, ever want to give it up. So it's just that, by osmosis and by my habits, I try to encourage people, you know, I always relate to, if you see a group of kids over in the corner of the playground having fun and laughing, you'll see all the other kids slowly gravitate.
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
Absolutely.
So I think, there's a many different cliches. The Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Rather,
It's funny. It is the big modus operandi, even for this, like the soulful way. And you've seen it from the ground up. You and I had lots of conversations about, how do we build this? And we build it, trying to build it in White Rock as well, too, like going to events and connecting with people and being involved in the community. But two, this is why at this stage of life, we decided to build the soulful way. And for us, it's happening online, but that's just because I've always communicated online. I've always run, Zoom meetings or connections long before COVID so that I can connect with people from all over the world. And I do love that we get to build it. It's building it slowly but surely. But it's this idea of staying rooted in a value of the month. Like kindness has been this month. Last month was values. Next month is about presence and being present in the moment. And I really think that when we set our focus and intention on that and then we come together, this is just one other element of what we're trying to build here. Because I definitely believe in that. Like we want to stay focused on what's important in our lives. We want to reach out. We want to make an effort. But it's not just about talking at people. It's about building a circle of community, and we're testing this out. to be able to do these workshops every month where we get together and we have that community connection. And last month was amazing, just that soulful connection wherever we can get it. So those of you that are watching this, if you don't live in a small town and you don't have that ability to kind of tap into that smaller community and you live in a big city, it can be done anywhere. It can be done where you gather a few people at a coffee shop. It can be done that you go to a musical event. It can be done online. It doesn't matter where you're doing it. Just keeping those values first and foremost in your life, talking about things that really truly matter, and then being there for one another. As you were saying about Hussein and it's Sam that is from Lebanon. It's just I found a couple of people here. There's two of them are here today, where they are in other parts of the world. They're in India, they're in the UK, and they are not in this privileged environment that we find ourselves in. And they are feeling that connection, when we're building this community. So it's however we can do it. So where do you see, Dave, in this next while, how do you see White Rock growing? You and I have talked about, that heart and soul or the kindest community. Where would you like to see White Rock in the next 5 to 10 years? Like if you had that big picture vision of how people are connecting and how we keep this sense of heart and kindness alive in our community.
I don't know that there's a big picture to
Yeah.
me. Um,
Yeah.
I don't really have a goal as such that I'm
Yeah.
working towards to,
Yeah.
to try to change
Yeah.
people or the community. I guess, I'm pretty happy here in White Rock. I'm very happy. As a matter of fact, I have,
Mhm.
a loving wife. I have a multitude of beautiful, wonderful friends. I'm a rich man. You know, I was recently married this past summer, and Gail and I often will talk about our wedding dance where there was 300 or 400 people there,
Yeah.
and we're sort of like, yeah,
Beautiful.
was so and so there? Yeah, I don't know. We had a guest registry, which very few people signed. A guest
Oh,
came in because it would have been great to be able to look back because it was just a joyful night of people from so many
absolutely.
layers of friendship and community that we all had one thing in common, and that was we were together for
Yeah.
that special night. It wasn't there to honor Gail and I. It was our special night, but we wanted it to be shared by all of our friends. And I
Oh,
guess
I definitely think we were all there to honor the two of you and the beautiful sparkling lights you are in the world. And I know that's not the most comfortable thing for you to hear, Dave, because you just do what you do. But you two are just like I never met your first wife and you're beautiful, Lori, but I know that, you have just always had this heart and soul that just loves. And I'm so grateful you and Gail found each other. And she's just a sparkling light. She's behind the scenes here watching us. But both of you have just been such a support to Todd and I in being in this community. And just there is a uniqueness. I want you to talk a little bit about the White Rock Sun because that's such a beautiful part of what you offer. That's our go to for our events, what's going on in council, how we connect. Why did you start that? And why do you think that kind of, online connection is important for people or that connection for people?
it was pretty simple why I started it, how I came to start it.
Yeah,
So, working in the music industry when
yeah,
Napster completely destroyed the record industry,
yeah,
I saw what digital did to that form of media.
yeah,
And to go back, as I mentioned to you, I've always read local community newspapers.
yeah.
Uh, they harbored some wonderful writers,
Mhm.
sometimes people whose careers were on the way up, and other times on the way down. So,
Yeah,
I, but it gave me a perspective, you know, yeah, of community, of connecting with the community. So, fast forward, I'm living in Vancouver, getting ready to move back out to White Rock, and so I go to the Now newspaper in Surrey and said to the publisher, nobody goes into the record store to buy music by a Canadian artist. There's no section that says Canada over here. Maybe in some stores there were, but generally speaking, people bought Loverboy records because they liked
I
Loverboy.
love Overboy.
They bought Jan Arden records, not because she was
Yeah.
from Calgary.
No.
They bought Jan. So I was like, I watched what happened in the music industry in Quebec. There was a huge star making machinery to make stars of Quebec. Celine Dion was selling
Yeah.
gold. She was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Nobody knew outside of Quebec who she was.
Yeah.
So I talked them into, I did a music column called Canada Calling, which basically just focused on Canadian artists without wrapping them in a Canadian flag. It was just,
Yeah.
to
Just
me,
highlighting the talent of this
yeah,
country.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of trying to just give back a little bit, rather
Yeah.
ironically, perhaps. But while I was in the belly of the beast, I started to see the facts and figures of community newspapers. I knew how important they were to me, but now all of a sudden I was seeing the
Yeah.
numbers, and I saw what was happening to the papers like the Vancouver Sun, and
Yeah.
the readership was on a steady decline, similar to what happened in the or in the music industry all over the world.
Yeah.
But I saw firsthand in the Canadian industry. So I saw what was happening with that form of media, and I'm like, huh,
Mhm.
that's interesting. And
Yeah.
at that time, I used to read the New York Times and the New York Post online because every newspaper had an online portal. They never promoted it
No.
because they couldn't monetize it like they could
Yeah.
the paper.
Yeah.
So I used to read the New York just basically for sports scores and keep up to date with my New York Yankees. And so I
Yeah.
knew that everybody had an online portal. And I checked, and sure enough, the Vancouver Sun and the province newspaper had an online version, but they never promoted it. They never went,
No.
because they didn't want people not reading the handheld paper version.
No.
So I sort of thought, wonder what it would take to create an online newspaper. Isn't that be kind of interesting?
Yeah.
Without having a paper version, just an online version.
Yeah.
In today's digital world, more and more people are
Yeah.
accessing their information.
And what year was that you started the White Rock Sun?
2007.
Okay. Wow.
Or was it 217? I think it's 2000. I can't, I'd have to look at the bottom of the masthead.
Forever.
Yeah, it just, because I do it every single day, 365 days of the year.
Unbelievable.
Digital, I can do it from Mexico, sitting by the pool,
Yeah.
or wherever I am. I don't have to physically be tied to
Yeah.
here in the community. Um,
Amazing.
so I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to start an online newspaper.
Yeah.
I started it, and then I thought, ass backwards as I normally do things, I should check to see what other online newspapers are doing. There were none. There still are none.
Yeah.
There are blogs. There are all
Wow.
other
Yeah.
things. Not an
No,
on.
and you get like the funny section. Like it's the way it feels like you're holding a newspaper. Like it has all those elements.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just digress a little bit here. I'm currently rebuilding a whole new
Yeah.
website because it's time to redo it. Um, and I hope that you will be a part of it. You and I have talked about you being a regular writer, so I hope that happens. Uh,
100%. I'm in.
so to even go a little bit further, so there I am merrily going along with the White Rock Sun, and people discover it quite organically.
Yeah.
Have I been? It was never something that I started to make money off of. If I had pictures of, like Punch the Monkey with his little cuddly bear, I'd have hundreds of thousands of people looking at it every single day. But the numbers that I do have compared
Oh,
to other newspapers, when they see the numbers that I have, they're like, oh my God, like if we had those kind of numbers. And to illustrate, well, last summer I was sitting down in Memorial Park here in White Rock above the pier having my sandwich or something, and
yeah.
this gentleman sticks his head around the corner of the hedge and he goes, "Are you Dave Chesney?" And I went, "Well, here we go." And, yes, I am. Matter of fact, and he goes, "Oh, I'm so and so." He said, "I'm the publisher of the Vancouver Sun." I said, "Wow, nice to
Wow.
meet you." He goes, "Can I ask you a question? How many people work at the White Rock Sun?" And I said, "Well, we're having a staff meeting right now." And he laughed. No, he said, that's unbelievable. He said, "You do it all yourself?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "My wife and I moved here like 6 years ago." And he said, "We start our day by reading the White Rock Sun. And it goes kind of full circle. We didn't really touch on it, but when I was growing up, my dad was a local radio announcer in Vancouver, Uncle Joe Chesney, and then eventually started his own radio station in Langley, CJJC, which was the first 24-hour country music radio station in British Columbia.
Awesome.
PFAC in Calgary, so there was two in Western Canada. So I kind of grew. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. So I worked my way up. When you work when you work at a place where your father's the boss, you can do one of two things. You can become a Trump kid and just be the old man's kid, or you can plow that road deeper and truer than anybody else, so nobody can throw it up in your face that you're the old man's kid.
Exactly.
Was that option, and damn proud I did. And I had the opportunity to be mentored by a number of great broadcast veterans.
Yeah.
So I worked my way up to the program director, and the station's doing good. The station's sounding pretty damn good in my mind. And I'm listening one afternoon, and Ched Miller, who we had lured from Fun Radio to come out to the valley, he's on the air. The station's sounding great, and I'm sort of sitting there. It's a sunny day, and all of a sudden, the whole flow of the radio station stops, and Ched goes, well, we have an announcement here. A black lab has been lost on 16th Avenue near 232nd Street. Answers to the name of Smokey. If you've seen Smokey, give Mabel a call at such and such. And I'm just like, oh my God, how hokey can you get? I don't believe it. So I buzzed the old man on the intercom in his office. I said, do you have a minute? He said, yeah, come on down. So I walked to his office and I said, you know, do you think the radio station has outgrown lost and found dogs? And he gave me this all knowing look, and I knew exactly what was coming.
Yeah.
And he sort of knowingly leaned back in his chair and he went, Dave, do you remember when we lost our little dog, Sandy? I said, yeah. He said, remember the day the man drove in the yard with our dog? I looked at him. I said, I'll leave now. And so,
Yeah.
that was,
That's a
I, re-
beautiful story.
I just recently,
Beautiful story.
because of the White Rock Sun, I get all of the stuff from the Surrey Police Service. Lo and behold, I get a press release that says they have found a dog wandering on the street in Ocean Park. It's a German Shepherd. There's no
Oh,
tag on it. It was found in such and such area. We picked it up. We have it at the detachment, and we will hold it for 2 days before we take it to the SPCA. So if
oh,
anybody's lost their German Shepherd, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how community oriented is that? So, you know,
you know what? That's that speaks. That's exactly like right there, the example. No matter how big you grow, you don't want to lose your heart. You
no,
don't want to lose connection to what's really real for the people in that community. That's
yeah,
so beautiful. Wow, what a great story. What a great story.
yeah.
Yeah. You're keeping it alive for all of us, Dave. I
Uh,
really appreciate. I know there's many people in our community
I
that
can't
are, but
alone. I can never do it alone.
no.
If I'm doing it, it's because people like you fuel me, and my friends, my family, my wife,
Yeah.
they all fuel me.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
otherwise I'd just be wandering around the pier like the rest of those people, not making eye contact.
No, that's never you. Well, I feel so grateful to have shared today with you. You're just a treasure in my life, Dave. I'm so grateful we met. And it is true. I feel like I've never not known you. I just always feel that kinship. That's that soul connection right from the very start. Anything else you want to add to this, darling? Anything you want to
Oh,
leave people with for the day?
yeah, I've noticed every once in a while there's a crawl along the bottom of the people that have joined, and I've seen some people that I know that know me that have tuned in this. Probably because they know me and they're like, "Oh my God, this should be good."
We had no idea where this is going to go today, Dave. We
Exactly.
just
But I hope that they and I too will. I can't guarantee I'll be here every week, but it's the domino effect. It's a pay it forward. We're kind of I know your vision. Let's all sit around the table and be with each other, and it's a virtual table. So I just hope people will take a little bit out of something that you or I said, and maybe just like that guy at the House Market that asked me what Jaspar's name was. They might go out today and go, you know what? I've been going to that grocery store for however many years. I have no idea what that what that person's name or the waitress when I go to the coffee shop that I go all the time. I think today I'm going to ask what her name is, and next time I'm going to walk in and I'm going to go, "Hi, Mabel. How are you today?" So,
Absolutely.
if anything comes out of this, that little nugget I hope happens.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I think just that little whisper, we talk lots at the Soulful Way about that why that wisdom within you, that little whisper, your conscience, Jiminy Cricket, your gut feel, whatever that is, that says, when you're going through the grocery line and the woman is being a little snarky, maybe she needs a compliment about her beautiful shirt or her beautiful, necklace or whatever it is. Or, are you having it looks like, there's a lot going on here. How's your day? Right? That pausing along your way throughout every single day. It's those little kindnesses that grow into the big, the feeling that we have as a connected community, as connected people. We never want to lose that. And I feel that every day with you, Dave. You just, even this morning, you sent me a little note and you said, you sent me Soul Sister and the song. And you're like, I'm looking forward to meeting with you today. It's all those really little touch points. It takes so little time for us to just touch point with each other, to be able to be there for one another. I'm grateful to have you here today.
You know one thing?
Yeah.
We never talked about kindness today.
Well, we did, but it was all about kindness. It was all about kindness.
All right.
All about kindness. This is how and that's the thing, is that it's woven into everything.
Yeah.
It's woven into how we show up in the work that we do. It's woven into the meeting with your friends and organizing. I know Todd, my husband, well, Dave, those of you that don't, if you're here for the first Soulful Sundays, first Sundays of every month, Todd is involved with that. And he started during COVID reconnecting with his buddies online because they all live in different places. And during COVID, started getting together every week in order to be able to just, one of his friends in Winnipeg was isolated the whole time. His kids weren't around. They were in the United States. And then now they meet on a regular basis. Like whatever that is, kindness is woven into all of this. How you show up this week. Go and have a beer at the pub and pull up a chair, at the main part of the bar, not at a table by the window. Sit at the bar, talk to people. We do that all the time down on Marina Bay. You laughed one day and said you should buy shares in Charlie's, because Charlie's Don't Surf is like our favorite little outdoor pub. And we just go and sit at the bar. We met so many lovely people by just choosing to integrate into community wherever we are, no matter where we are. So it's all about kindness, Dave. And you're the king, my friend. You're the king. I love you, darling.
Love
Thanks
you.
for joining me today.
I,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Soulful Session today. This is all about building community. It's about building our lives consciously around values that every month, the Soulful Way, we start off, we select a theme for that month, a value for that month, and then we have the Soulful Way newsletter that kind of sets that tone for it. Every Sunday, we have a little touch point. We have some talks about whatever that theme is. Next month is presence. And next Saturday, we have our workshop on the soul of kindness. And so if you're looking for that deep dive and you're looking for that community, this is what we're trying to build. And please reach out if you'd like to be a part of that. And just thanks for joining us today. Lots of love, Dave. I'm wishing you the kindest day ever, my friend.
Jennifer, take care.
You bet. Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Okay. Happy day. Bye. Bye, sweetheart.